I opened the door and there he was, my father. The man who kicked me out when I was barely 16 stood on my porch like a lost puppy, eyes shifting, mouth dry, holding his hat like he was begging for mercy. Behind him, his new son, his pride and joy, sat awkwardly in the car, watching us. My father looked thinner, older, but none of that erased what he'd done. I stared at him in silence, heart pounding like a war drum in my chest. Then he opened his mouth and said the words that made my stomach twist. "I need your help. My son. He got into college, but we can't afford the tuition. I heard you're doing well now." He didn't say, "I'm proud of you." He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't even ask how I'd survived all those years. He just came to collect. Before I dive in, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps more people hear stories like this. Anyway, back to that moment. I didn't move. I just stood there, arms folded, eyes locked on him, like I was trying to see if he was real. Because for years, I'd wondered where he was, how he was, if he ever regretted what he did. But not once had he reached out. Not when I slept in my car. Not when I was hospitalized. Not even when I made my first million. He only came when he needed something. I remember the exact moment he kicked me out. 16 years old. It was a Tuesday. My suitcase was already packed when I got home from school. He stood at the door, hand in hand with his new wife, looking at me like I was nothing more than clutter in their perfect new life. "You'll land on your feet," he said. "You're smart. You'll figure it out." I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I just left. That night, I slept behind a gas station in my old hoodie, using my backpack as a pillow. That was the beginning. The next few months were brutal. I worked 3 jobs: janitor at a local diner, stockboy at a 24-hour grocery store, and weekends I helped a mechanic who paid me in food and spare change. I washed in public restrooms, ate crackers for dinner, slept with a knife under my pillow. But I didn't give up. What kept me going? A memory. One night, right before my mom died, she whispered to me, "You are meant for more, baby. One day, they'll regret leaving you behind." I held on to that like a lifeline. Eventually, I got a scholarship. A tiny community college offered me free tuition if I worked in the library. I took it. I worked during the day and studied all night. Graduated top of my class, got an internship at a tech firm. Within 4 years, I was making 6 figures. Within 7, I launched my own software company. The world that once spat me out suddenly wanted a piece of me. But I kept quiet. I didn't show off. I didn't go back for revenge. I let success be the sound I made. Until now. Now, the man who threw me out like trash stood on my porch asking me to pay for his other son's education. "So, you gonna help us?" he asked, eyes darting behind me, maybe hoping someone would step in, someone who could soften me up. But no one did. My silence made him nervous. He started rambling. "I know things were rough. I made mistakes. But he's just a kid. He didn't do anything to you. He's got potential, you know? Just like you did." I raised an eyebrow. Just like me? The same kid he used to call useless? The same one he said wasn't his problem anymore? I stepped out onto the porch, closed the door behind me, and looked him in the eye. "You kicked me out for her," I said. "You didn't even look back." "I had to," he said. "It was complicated." "Was it complicated when you changed your number? When I called from a payphone and she laughed in the background?" He looked away. "I was trying to keep peace in the house." I laughed. "Peace? You threw your own son into the streets. Look, I didn't come here to argue," he said. "I came to ask for help." "Help?" I said. "Like the help you gave me? A bus ticket to nowhere and a 'you'll land on your feet' speech?" He stayed quiet. I took a breath. "Let me ask you something. If I was still broke, still sleeping in shelters, still invisible, would you be standing here today? He didn't answer, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. I turned to leave, but then he spoke again, this time softer. I'm sorry. 2 words. That's all. Not, I was wrong. Not, I failed you. Just, I'm sorry. And for a moment, I almost believed him. Almost. Because then I remembered what he said the last time I saw him. This isn't a home for you anymore. I looked him straight in the eye. Tell your son to apply for financial aid. He did. He got rejected. Tell him to take a gap year. Work like I did. He's not like you. No, I said. He's not. And with that, I opened the door and walked back inside. But that wasn't the end. Because the next morning, I got a call from a reporter. Someone had leaked my name to the press, claimed I was turning my back on family, that I had forgotten where I came from. The story went viral, and that's when everything really exploded. The article's headline screamed from my phone screen. Millionaire tech founder refuses to help struggling half-brother attend college. I stared at it in disbelief. My face was plastered right below the title, smiling in a suit I wore to a charity gala 2 months ago. They had picked the most rich and unbothered photo they could find. The story twisted everything. I was painted as the cold, arrogant son who slammed the door on a poor kid's dream. No mention of the fact that I was kicked out at 16. No mention that I once slept under a bridge. No mention that this man, my biological father, hadn't said a single word to me in over a decade until he needed money. My phone buzzed, and buzzed, and buzzed again. Texts, emails, DMs. Half of them were from reporters, hungry for a statement. The other half? Strangers throwing knives. You forgot where you came from. Shame on you. I hope someone does the same to your kids. But then came the other side. Quiet, private messages from people who did know. Read your story. Same thing happened to me. Stay strong. My father walked out too. You don't owe anyone anything. I've been waiting for someone to say no. Thank you for saying it. Still, the backlash was real. Clients began asking questions. A few investors grew cautious. One even sent a polite but sharp message. Perception matters. And then came the call I dreaded. Hi, this is Nora from PR, my assistant whispered over the line. Your dad just gave an exclusive to a gossip site. It's not good. She sent me the link. His face, wrinkled, tired, theatrical, was right there at the top of the page. I didn't raise him to be like this, he said. He was such a sweet boy. But success changed him. Now he thinks he's too good for us. I read every word, every twisted sentence. He talked about birthdays he never missed. He talked about teaching me how to ride a bike. He even cried in the video. Lies, all of it. He hadn't attended my 17th, 18th, 21st. He didn't teach me how to ride a bike. It was my neighbor, Mr. Ortega, the man who fixed cars in his driveway and let me eat dinner with his family when I had nothing. But the worst part wasn't the lies. It was the comments. Thousands of them. People calling me selfish, spoiled, ungrateful. It shook me. Not because I cared what strangers thought, but because it brought up every scar I had spent years burying. And somewhere deep down, that 16-year-old boy, the one standing with a bag at the door, watching his father smile at his new wife, he started to resurface. And he was angry. I closed my laptop, pulled the curtains, and sat in the dark. I needed to think. What now? Do I stay silent and let the narrative stick? Or do I speak? Because for once, the world was watching. I picked up my phone and opened the Notes app. I didn't know what I was writing at first, but once I started, the words poured out like a dam had broken. I was kicked out at 16, no warning, no support. I slept in my car for 2 years. Everything I have, I built from scratch. I didn't forget where I came from. I remember it every single day. I said no, not because I'm cruel, but because I survived alone. and I learned this. Family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who shows up when you have nothing to offer. I don't owe silence to the people who abandoned me, and I don't owe wealth to the ones who mocked me while I struggled. I sat with the message for 10 minutes. My finger hovered over post. My heart pounded. But then, I clicked it, posted. I turned off my phone, made tea, and watched the rain hit the windows like tiny fists. 3 hours later, I turned my phone back on. 400,000 likes, hundreds of thousands of shares, and most importantly, my voice was out there. The next morning, an old woman stood outside my office door. "Are you Mr. Elijah?" I nodded. She smiled. "I was your mother's nurse at the hospice. I read your post. She would have been so proud." Her voice cracked. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. "Your mom left this. Told me to give it to you if I ever saw your name in the news." My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Inside was a photo. Me, 4 years old, sitting on her lap. We were laughing. On the back, in her writing, "Never forget, you were born for more than pain." I closed my eyes and let the tears fall. My mother never saw me rich, never saw the house I built, the scholarships I started, the staff I now employ. But she saw me before anyone else did. She knew I'd survive. And now, I was done surviving. It was time to speak. To really speak. I called my lawyer. "Set up an interview. National. Full story. No edits." He was quiet. "Are you sure?" "Dead sure." Because I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was speaking for every kid who'd been kicked out, overlooked, discarded. Every person who made it through the fire alone and was now being guilted into silence. The interview aired 2 days later. I told it all, every detail, how I lived, how I struggled, how I rose, and how the man asking for money now hadn't even sent me a birthday text in over a decade. The host asked, "If your half-brother called you himself, would you help him?" I paused, looked into the camera. "If he calls me, not to ask for money, but to understand me, I'll answer." The internet exploded again, but this time the tide had turned. People were sharing their own stories. Not My Job was trending. A campaign started to fund low-income college students with no family support, and a week later, a letter showed up at my door. No return address, just 3 words on the envelope. "I'm so sorry." Inside, a photo. A kid, my half-brother, standing outside a university admissions building, holding a sign. "They kicked you out, but you inspired me to stay in." I stared at the photo for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. It rang once, twice. Then, "Hello?" I took a deep breath, but before I could speak, a knock hit my door, loud, sharp, repeated. I opened it, and what I saw next made my heart stop. The door creaked open, and there, soaked in rain, stood my father. Again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a man in a suit, tall, sharply dressed, holding a briefcase. And beside that man, a young woman with a microphone and a camera slung over her shoulder. Press. "Can we talk?" my father asked, his voice hoarse, like he hadn't slept in days. Just let me say something. No cameras, just me and you." The man with the briefcase cleared his throat. "Mr. Elijah, we're with Fair Voice Media. We're not here to attack. We're documenting reconciliation stories. Your father reached out. He said there was more to the story, something you haven't heard yet." I narrowed my eyes. "More to the story? You mean more than kicking me out? More than ghosting me for a decade?" He held up his hand. "Please, just 5 minutes. No recording, no setups. He just wants to explain." I hesitated. My instincts screamed no. But curiosity whispered, what if? I opened the door wider. 5 minutes, no more. They stepped in. Water dripped from their jackets. The camera crew stayed outside, respecting the boundary. My father stood in the center of the living room like a ghost revisiting the life he lost. He looked around, almost in awe. "So this is where you live now. It's beautiful." I said nothing. He nodded slowly, then took a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to me. "Read it, please. I wrote it last week." I didn't know how else to say what I need to say. I took the letter, unfolded it, and began to read. "To my son, you probably don't want to hear from me. I wouldn't blame you. What I did to you at 16, it haunts me every night, but I need to explain what you never saw. Not to excuse it, just to explain. When I met Linda, your stepmom, I was drowning in debt. I was weak. I let her control everything. She said it was her home, not mine. She didn't want baggage. She called you that. I didn't stop her. I should have. I thought I could fix it later. I thought you'd land on your feet. You were always smarter than me. But that's not an excuse for walking away. I lost everything in trying to please someone who only saw me as a paycheck. And now that she's gone, now that I live alone in a rented room eating canned soup, I realize I threw away the only real thing I had, my son. I'm not asking for money, I swear. And I didn't mean for this media storm. It spiraled. I just wanted one conversation. I'm proud of what you built, and I'm sorry for every day I wasn't there to help you build it." I finished reading. I looked up. He was crying now, chest heaving, lips trembling like a man finally unburdening a truth he'd carried for too long. And just for a flicker of a second, I saw him. Not the man who hurt me, but the man I once believed in. The man who took me fishing before my mom died. The man who sang off-key lullabies when I had nightmares. That man had been buried under layers of weakness, guilt, and years of silence. But for a moment he surfaced. "I'm not here to beg," he said quietly. "I just wanted to say that before I die." "Die?" I asked, alarmed. The lawyer stepped forward and opened the briefcase. "Mr. Elijah, this is going to sound abrupt, but your father is ill, late-stage liver disease, diagnosed 7 months ago. He didn't come here just for college tuition. He came because he didn't want to leave this world without trying to make things right." I sat down slowly. It felt like the air had been knocked from my lungs. My whole life I'd imagined this man strong, untouchable, indifferent. But now he stood before me, frail, sick, broken. I didn't know whether to scream or hug him. All I could do was stare. He took a shaky step forward. "I can't undo what I did, but I'm trying to give my son, your brother, a chance to not follow in my footsteps. He doesn't even know I came here. He's a good kid. He applied to every scholarship out there. He works weekends. I just wanted to give him one break, the kind I never gave you." A long silence followed, and then I spoke. "Why now? Why wait until the world is watching?" "Because shame is a powerful silencer," he said, and it took the world watching for me to finally speak. I looked at the letter again. The man I used to be, the one living out of his car, the one who skipped meals to afford textbooks. He wouldn't have believed this moment, he would have spat at it. But the man I am now, the one who built something from nothing, he had a choice, to stay bitter, or to lead differently. I stood up. "Tell your son to come see me, alone, no cameras, no lawyers." His eyes widened. "Really?" "I want to see what kind of man he is." He nodded slowly, as if unsure whether to smile or cry. "And you?" I asked. "What happens to you now?" "I go back to my room," he said. "I take my meds. I wait. I watch old videos of you on YouTube. I pray." He turned to leave. But just before stepping out the door, he said, "You didn't owe me anything, Elijah, but thank you for listening." The door clicked shut behind him, and I stood there holding a letter that felt heavier than any check I'd ever written. The next morning, there was a knock on my office door. This time, it wasn't my father. It was his son, my half-brother. He was tall, nervous, clutching a folder. His hands shook as he stepped inside. "Hi, I'm Jordan," he said. "You don't know me, but I know a lot about you." He sat down, opened the folder. "I brought everything. Grades, letters, my essay. I'm not here to ask. I'm here to prove I'm worth your time." I stared at him. He looked nothing like my father, but there was something in his eyes. Determination, hunger, something familiar. "I don't want your money," he said. I want to know who you are. You're my brother, and I want to earn your respect." That was the moment something shifted. The past was heavy, but the future, maybe it didn't have to be. I leaned back in my chair. "Tell me your story, Jordan." And as he spoke, I listened, really listened. But before he finished, the door burst open again, and this time it wasn't family. It was someone I hadn't seen in 15 years, and what she said next would change everything. The door swung open so hard it slammed against the wall. I stood up immediately, heart in my throat, instincts flaring like a fire alarm. And then I saw her, Linda, my father's second wife, the woman who called me baggage, the woman who once stood behind him with a smirk as he told me to find my own way, the woman who never expected to see me again, certainly not like this. But here she was, in my office. 15 years older, but every bit as sharp and bitter-looking as I remembered. She looked me up and down like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then she looked at Jordan, her stepson, and narrowed her eyes. "So it's true," she said. "You really came crawling to him?" Jordan stood up, startled. "I didn't crawl." "I told you to stay away from him," she snapped. "He's manipulating you. This is exactly how he traps people." I stepped forward, calm but cold. "Linda, what are you doing here?" She scoffed. "Saving my family from embarrassment." "Your family?" I said slowly. "You mean the one you dismantled when you convinced my father to kick me out?" Her expression faltered, just for a second, but then she composed herself. "Don't twist things. You were difficult. Your father had no choice." "Oh, I remember," I said. "You called me the deadweight. You told him I wasn't worth the space I took up." "That's not," she started, but then paused, biting her tongue. Jordan looked at her like she was a stranger. "Wait, you said he left because of money problems. You said he chose to walk away." Linda's eyes darted between us. "Jordan, honey, let's go. This man is dangerous, vindictive. He's only doing this for show." I looked Jordan in the eye. "You can leave if you want, but if you want the truth, I'll give it to you, all of it." Jordan didn't move, didn't blink. Then slowly, he sat back down. "I'm staying," he said. Linda's face darkened. "You think he's your brother? He's nothing. Just because you share DNA doesn't mean you share blood." Jordan turned to her. "You lied to me. My whole life. About him. About Dad. About everything." "I did it to protect you," she said. "He's not the hero you think he is." And then, she turned back to me. "I know why you're really doing this. You want revenge. You want to ruin us because you were jealous. Still are." I took a breath, steadying the fire rising in my chest. "Linda," I said softly, "this isn't revenge. Revenge would be sending you the eviction notice I legally could have served 3 months ago when I bought the apartment complex you still live in." Her face went pale. I continued, "But I didn't. You know why? Because I don't need to take anything from you. You already lost." She was silent. I stepped closer. "You built a kingdom on control, manipulation, and lies, and now it's crumbling. That's not because of me. That's karma cashing its check." Linda looked shaken, for the first time, truly unsure of herself. She turned to Jordan. "If you leave with him, don't come back." Jordan stood up, calm, steady. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just finally seeing clearly. Without another word, she stormed out. The room fell silent again. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the weight of what had just happened. Jordan looked at me, visibly shaken. I had no idea. She lied to everyone, I said, even my dad. He thought he was protecting you, when he was really being controlled. He nodded slowly. I believe you now. I sat back down. You said you brought your college documents? He handed me the folder again, hands trembling slightly. Everything's in there. I'm trying to get into architecture. I want to design shelters for kids who get kicked out of their homes, like you did. I stared at him. That sentence hit harder than he knew. I flipped through his papers, grades, essays, recommendation letters, a drawing of a community center with skylights and emergency beds labeled with names like Hope and Reclaim. He was serious. He was different. And he had a fire in him, the same one I once had. I closed the folder and nodded. All right, let me make some calls. His eyes widened. Really? I'm not just going to pay your tuition, I said. I'm going to sponsor your entire path, as long as you stay focused. He stood there stunned, trying to speak but failing. His voice cracked when he finally whispered, Thank you. I leaned forward. Don't thank me yet. You've got work to do. You're carrying more than your own future now. You're carrying a second chance for 2 families. He nodded. And then, for the first time in my life, I hugged my brother. It wasn't long, but it meant something. That night, I sat alone in my house, staring at an old photo album I hadn't opened in years. Pictures of my mom, me as a child, a few blurry shots of my father before he drifted away. And then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked it up. Hello? It was a nurse. Mr. Elijah? Your father. He collapsed earlier tonight. He's at Mercy Hospital. He's asking for you. My heart dropped. Not because I owed him, but because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to say goodbye. I grabbed my keys and ran for the car. I didn't know what I'd say, or what I'd hear. But I knew this chapter wasn't over. Not yet. The hospital lights were too bright, too sterile, too quiet. I walked past the front desk and told the nurse my name. She looked up quickly, recognition in her eyes, and pointed down the hallway. Room 411, she said gently. He's still awake. He's been asking for you since they brought him in. I nodded, swallowing the knot in my throat, and made my way down the long corridor. Each step felt like a memory. Flashes of the day he closed the door on me, the Christmases he never showed up for, the birthdays I spent alone with a cupcake and a candle no one else would see. But beneath those memories were others, quieter ones. Him holding my bike steady, him humming old jazz tunes on lazy Saturday mornings, him reading me that same dog-eared storybook every night for a month straight because I liked how he did the voices. Some part of me still missed the man I thought he was. When I reached the door, I paused. What was I doing here? Forgiveness? Closure? Curiosity? Maybe all of it. I opened the door. He lay in the bed, thin and pale, hooked up to IVs, but his eyes lit up the second he saw me. Elijah, he breathed. You came. I stepped inside, pulled the chair closer and sat. You look terrible, I said, half joking. He laughed, weakly. I feel worse. A long silence settled, but it wasn't heavy. It was full, charged. I didn't think you'd come, he whispered. I didn't either. He nodded slowly, then looked at me, eyes glassy. I saw what you did for Jordan. Thank you. He's a good kid. He reminds me of someone, I said. A smile tugged at the edge of his lips. You. Another silence. This one hurt more. I read your letter, I finally said, and I believe you meant it. I did, he said. Every word. I leaned forward. Then there's one thing I need you to do for me before anything else. Name it. Stop asking for my forgiveness. He blinked. What? I held his gaze. Stop trying to make me say the words. Stop making this about fixing the past. We can't fix it. It happened. It broke me. But it also built me. And I'm not that 16-year-old anymore. He nodded slowly. I don't want to erase it. I just wanted to leave this world knowing you didn't hate me. I don't hate you, I said softly. I needed to, for a long time. But hate is heavy, and I'm tired of carrying it. Tears streamed down his cheeks. I wish I'd been braver, he whispered. I wish I'd fought for you. I did that for both of us, I said, and now, you get to fight for what's left. His breathing grew slower, labored. The machines beeped quietly. I'm proud of you, he said. So proud. I wish your mother could see you. She does, I whispered. Every day. He smiled again. Will you stay? Yeah, I said. I'm not going anywhere. He reached for my hand. His grip was weak, shaky, but it was real. We sat like that for hours, talking, not talking, healing. He passed away 3 days later, quietly, peacefully. No press, no drama. Just a man closing a story he had once abandoned. At the funeral, Jordan stood beside me. He gave the eulogy, said the kind things that needed to be said. Afterwards, I pulled him aside. I set up a scholarship fund, I told him, in Dad's name, for kids like me, like you, kids who didn't get the family they deserved. He looked stunned. You did that? I nodded. But you're going to run it. You'll choose the kids, guide them, be the mentor I never had. He looked overwhelmed, but honored. I'll do it, I swear. As the crowd left and the sky turned gray, I stood alone at the grave. No words, just wind. But I felt something shift inside me. The weight was gone. Not forgotten, but released. A chapter closed, a new one just beginning. A week later, I walked into the new foundation headquarters, named not after me or my father, but my mother. The Teresa Hope Fund. First applicant was a 17-year-old girl from the foster system. I want to build solar homes, she said shyly, for kids who age out of care. I smiled. You're exactly the kind of future we're looking for. That night, I went home, poured a glass of tea, and sat on the porch, the same porch where my father once stood, asking me for help. Only now, I understood. He wasn't asking for money. He was asking for a bridge, and I had built it, brick by brick, not with revenge, but with resolve. Because sometimes, justice isn't about slamming the door. It's about choosing who gets to walk through it, and who never will again.